A line of camels moves like a pulse across the dunes. Each back carries a white block, heavier than iron, worth more than lives. In the Sahel, a single load of salt could decide a war. Who set those prices in a desert with no mint and no king to enforce them? This film explains the market logic that ran across the sand, how caravans turned salt, steel, and silk into money without coins, how oases and guilds stabilized value, how city-states taxed the flow, and why the Atlantic trade shattered the system. We will follow the routes, watch the ratios change, meet the brokers who enforced promises, and end with the collapse.
The Sahara is not empty. It is a network of corridors, rock plateaus that channel wind, gravel pans that spare hooves, and oases set one march apart. Caravans do not wander, they schedule. The calendar is a shield. Cross in the cool seasons, rest at wells before the noon heat, avoid the powder dune belts when winds shift. Value formed around risk. The danger was not only thirst. Camels could founder in collapsing sand, salt blocks could splinter if strapped wrong, and a lost day meant wages, fodder, and interest lost. So prices were never just about supply, they were about time saved and hazard avoided. At the head and the tail of each caravan, brokers carried maps in their heads. Who owed what in which city? Which governor would demand a transit fee? Where raiders had been seen last week? These were not random peddlers. They were tied to merchant houses and desert clans. They carried more than goods. They carried reputations. A caravan was a moving balance sheet. The lead buyer had already sold part of the load on paper. He carried letters and verbal promises that other houses would honor. The moment the first camels knelt at an oasis, the ledger updated. Fodder bought, guards hired, water paid in kind. Salt became currency because people died without it. In the forest zones to the south, salt was scarce. Sweat drained it from the body. In the desert, salt was abundant, but the labor to cut and haul it was costly. That is why the salt-to-gold ratio, how many blocks bought a standard weight of gold, floated with season, safety, and rumor. Tagaza looked like a city of rectangles, pits cut into crust, huts built from the same white blocks they exported. Workers lived inside their product. The blocks were bulky, brittle, and, by design, uniform. Uniformity was value. A block you could stack and count was a block you could tax. In the Sahel towns, ratios were negotiated in courtyards, not shouted in markets. Brokers inspected blocks, tested grain, and weighed dust on copper scales. A good caravan chief sold early to avoid a glut, or waited for late-season scarcity. A bad chief arrived with everyone else and begged the price. Salt bought more than gold. It bought people taken on frontier raids. It bought iron blooms and finished blades. It bought cloth that signaled rank. In famine years, it bought safety, if you could pay. The same block that fed a city this month could fund a raid the next. No police patrolled the dunes, yet contracts held. Why? Because routes were few, wells were fixed, and clans controlled both. If your house cheated, your caravans found dry wells and cold fires. Your letters were ignored in the next city. Reputation became law because access was scarce. Measured, explanatory, steady. Emphasize fairness and reputation. At oases, guild-like networks ran services: animal hire, water rights, saddle repair, Guards' quarters. Prices looked calm because everyone understood the cost of storm. In drought, a water lord could break a merchant with one price rise. He rarely did. Tomorrow he would need that merchant's credit to bring fodder in. Brokers carried signs of trust, seals, phrases, introductions that opened storage rooms in distant cities. Many were multilingual, moving between Berber, Arabic, and Sahel tongues. Their memory was inventory. If one died, his deaths and promises became a family emergency. The line between solvency and ruin could be a caravan 2 weeks late. Tax was not only coins at a gate, it was obligate purchases. Buy fodder from the governor's cousin. Hire guards from this troop. Gift cloth to the judge. The city called it regulation. The merchant called it friction. Both called it normal. Sigil Massa anchored the north. It turned Mediterranean textiles and steel into desert packages, and desert packages into Mediterranean bills of exchange. Officials tracked caravans weeks away. Smiths tuned blades for desert work. Scribes wrote letters that rode ahead of camels. Timbuktu rose on knowledge and timing. Markets could look calm at noon and erupt at dusk when a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Scholars taught law that merchants actually used. Governors promised safety they sometimes could not deliver. The city's strength was storage, warehouses that held blocks when price dipped and fed neighborhoods when it spiked. Gao bent the river's muscle to trade. Boats meant bulk, grain in, salt out, people across. When states centralized, they taxed river choke points. When states weakened, guilds and clans enforced the rules. Gao's power was the ledger stroke that could reprice a cargo in a day. Each city took a slice without stopping the flow. That was the trick. A toll too high sent caravans to rival routes. A toll too low invited raiders who smelled fat profit. Stable cities charged just enough to fund walls and guards and keep the market moving. Steel rode the desert in small packages with large meanings. A knife that held an edge could change a family's day. A sword that did not bend could change a lieutenant's loyalty. Steel traveled with stories, Fez, Ifriqiya, beyond the sea. Stories were price tags. Cloth was currency twice over. Fine weave marked rank in court. Coarse cloth clothed caravans and guards. When gold was unstable, cloth held the peace between governor and merchant because the governor's household consumed it steadily. A warehouse of cloth was a savings account. People were priced too. Frontier raids fed slave markets. Some marched north to farms and homes. Others labored in desert mines and city yards. Everyone in the system knew it, even if records hid it. Salt paid for people. People carried salt. Gold priced both. A caravan was a parade of contradictions. A scholar arguing law, while guards bargained for captives. A judge riding behind a raider. A prayer at dusk and a sail at dawn. The desert turned morals into logistics. What moved kept moving. Then a coastline opened and broke the math. Ships carried bulk salt to ports without the desert's friction. Gold flowed to factories that minted coins by the tray. Cloth from mills undercut artisan looms by a factor caravans could not match. Steel arrived by the ton. Cities that lived on corridor tolls faced a hole in their budgets. Some raised taxes. Caravans peeled away to rival wells. Some pivoted to knowledge and law, selling learning that ships could not carry. Others sank. The roots did not vanish at once. They thinned. The letter networks still mattered. Oases still decided survival.
A few houses adapted by selling people to the coast. The human cost spiked even as the market they knew collapsed.
3 takeaways. First, value followed risk, not just scarcity. The block price moved with time saved and danger avoided. Second, enforcement was social. Wells and routes turned reputation into law. Third, the Atlantic did not invent markets. It changed the cost of distance. When the cost of distance dropped, old currencies died. Next time, how a paperwork revolution in a river city replaced desert promises with stamped receipts and why that felt like losing freedom.